David is perking up a little bit. He's coming out of the fog. And a lot of that has to do with him worshiping and the Lord lifting him up. And he's starting to think more strategically. Finally. Right? There's some strategic things going on in this chapter. That's very good. And that catches us up to our text tonight. I gave all these characters a title. And that's kind of how I read the text. So we're going to do that tonight. So the first character, and he is a character, is the double agent. The double agent in chapter 15, verse 32. Let's pick up that, okay? Check this out. David, this is where we picked up last week, is coming to the summit. The summit of what? The Mount of Olives, where God was worshipped, right? And behold, Hushai, the Archite, came to meet him with his coat torn and dirt on his head. And David said to him, "If you go on with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant in time past. So now I will be your servant,' then you will defeat for me the counsel of Ahithophel." That's a main point. Okay, I have underlined that in my Bible because that makes him a double agent, right? So, question. This is one of David's closest friends, Hushai. What does David ask Hushai to do specifically? Spy for him, right? Spy for him. So there is a ruse going on with this double agent. The ruse is, listen, Hushai, you return to Jerusalem. You're going to pretend to be on Absalom's team, but really you're going to keep an ear to the ground. And you're going to listen intently, specifically to who? Ahithophel. Why, question, would Hushai listen very closely to Ahithophel? Who is that? Yeah. Yes. Okay, so yes, Bathsheba's grandfather, but to David specifically, he was David's counselor. Okay? His highest counselor, really the conscience on David's shoulder in the form of a general who would give David strategy and wise counsel about the things that are going on. So Hushai is supposed to listen to the things that Ahithophel are saying. So the objective is defeat Ahithophel's counsel. That's your job. Should you choose to accept this mission, this tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds. That's what this is, okay? So the mission is defeat Ahithophel's counsel. The directive then to Hushai is to pass intel to the priesthood, right? To Zadok. You're going to pass what you hear from Ahithophel, you're going to pass it to the priesthood. You're going to tell Zadok, the high priest. He's going to pass it to Abiathar's boys. Not the high priest, but Abiathar has been with David for a long time. Remember the slaughter at Nob with the priests? Okay, so Ahithophel's, or Abiathar, everybody has the same name. They're his boys. You're going to pass them to the boys. They run faster than you guys, okay? And the boys are going to bring me the message. So that's what Hushai is going to do. Do we all understand that? That's important. It's going to come up. So Hushai does exactly this. We're going to skip ahead for a minute. Turn to chapter 16. Just flip the page to verse 15 through 19. And check this out. Remember, we are taking this chapter a little bit different. We're going character by character, Okay, so Hushai, look at verse 15, chapter 16, verse 15. Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. When Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom, Hushai said to Absalom, "Long live the king! Long live the king!" And Absalom said to Hushai, "What's up? I thought you were Dad's friend, right? I thought your loyalty was with David. Is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend, Hushai?" Right? Hushai says this. Watch this really carefully. It's really intriguing. "No, for whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel have chosen, his I will be, and with him I will remain. And again, whom should I serve? Should it not be his son? As I have served your father, so I will serve you." This is really interesting because notice the things that Hushai says are a little open-ended. Do you guys notice that?
Because David was chosen by God to be king, but Absalom wasn't.
That's right. Look at what Hushai says. Really, whose loyalty is he pledging allegiance to between the lines? Does he betray David here? Because look at this. He says, "Whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel have chosen, his I will be, and with him I will remain." Or in other words, whom the Lord has chosen, with him I will remain. Who's he talking about? Who's the Lord's anointed? Yeah, he's really good. He's really good at it. So this is Hushai. This is his job, right? Whom the Lord has chosen, with him I will remain. Absalom should have probably picked that up. But Absalom, as we will find out, is a little stuck on himself. He's a little self-sided, a little arrogant, a little narcissist. Okay, he doesn't pick it up. But it's very interesting. Okay, character number 2. The opportunist. Okay, chapter 16, verse 1 through 4. When David had passed a little beyond the summit, that is, he's now on the downward side of the Mount of Olives, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of donkeys saddled, bearing 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, 100 of summer fruits, and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, "Why have you brought these?" What is with the skepticism on the gift baskets in this book? Anyway, Ziba answered, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. The bread and summer fruit are for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who are faint in the wilderness to drink." And the king said, "Where is your master's son?" Who is Ziba's master, and who is Ziba's master's son? Saul, Jonathan, right? And the son is Mephibosheth. Okay, that's good. Check it out. The king is asking, where is Mephibosheth? That's what he's asking. Ziba says, "Behold, he remains in Jerusalem, for he said, 'Today the house of Israel will give me back the kingdom of my father.'" Look at this again. "Today, the house of Israel will give me back the kingdom of my father." What does Ziba say that Mephibosheth is saying? he wants the throne. Because Mephibosheth is in line, technically, for the throne, being the son of the prince, the grandson of Saul, right? So Ziba makes up this story that Mephibosheth is vying for the throne. Or in other words, it's anarchy and betrayal, just like Absalom. So question, we've seen this guy before in our text, Ziba. When did we see him? Specifically, where have we seen Ziba before? He was a servant of Saul. Specifically, what did David tell Ziba he was going to do for the rest of his life? Yes. Okay, exactly. So he was Mephibosheth's servant according to chapter 9. Okay? When David brought Mephibosheth to the throne and reestablished him, right? Gave him back his inheritance, let him sit at the king's table, that whole beautiful story. He pointed to Ziba and said, you are now his servant. You and all your sons. Remember I had like 20 sons to mow? 15 sons, okay, to mow the yard and all the stuff that Mephibosheth couldn't do because Mephibosheth is paralyzed. He's lame. So David made sure that Mephibosheth was taken care of by Ziba. So the ruse is Ziba comes with all these presents, right? Donkeys and gift baskets, harrying David and stuff. All this stuff comes out, right? David is told that Mephibosheth is what? Betraying him. That's a nutshell version, right? Betraying him. He's trying to take the throne, right? By pulling the prince card back in Jerusalem because he's of the former dynasty, right? Do you guys remember that? How David and Jonathan had made this covenant together, and Jonathan says to David, what? What was the covenant between the boys? Yeah, Jonathan's like, listen, whether I'm with you or not, you got to promise that you're going to take care of my family. And that would be completely counterculture to what you're supposed to do when a king is changing dynasties for this very reason. This is why they got rid of anybody who would be in line. The objective then of Ziba was to convince David that Mephibosheth too was a traitor, like so many that David had trusted. Are you guys keeping a tally? It's ugly. And David loops this in and like, well, I guess Mephibosheth also hates me. Why not? Stand in line. Everybody else does. And David believes this because everybody else is doing it, right? Ziba knew that and is preying on David's vulnerability right now, and he goes for it. Yeah, the directive then from David in verse 4 is that David was going to transfer all that belonged to Mephibosheth's royal inheritance to Ziba, the servant. Okay, next character. Ready? The curse. Shimei. The curse. Okay, we're going to kind of summarize this. But question for those of you who did your homework, which is like everyone. Question, who is Shimei? Verse 5. Yep, he curses David. Who is he though? Yes, he is another Saul family member. It says in verse 5. The curse from Shimei was that David was worthless, that he's a murderer, right? He says all these horrible things. Neither of those things are true. It's against Mephibosheth, And actually the family of Saul in general, he's saying that you're worthless and you're a murderer and you've treated our house bad, where in reality, David did exactly opposite that, much to his detriment. He treated Saul's family well. So these curses are misplaced. They're a lie. Nonetheless, they are very hurtful. And he's physically being attacked by this jerk, right? Shimei, getting stuff thrown at him and everything. David's predicament, totally opposite from what Shimei says, has nothing to do with David mistreating Saul's family, which is where the accusation lies, right? This is happening to you because you messed with my family. No, David messed with his own family. Yeah. That is why. But nonetheless, right? So David has done absolutely opposite of that. He has held true to Jonathan's covenant. But the objective of Shimei was to do what? To break David down even more. Like he couldn't already be broken enough. This guy has completely David's like a puddle at this point. He's got rocks in his face. He's humiliated. How humiliating would this be as the king to have this walk of shame that's already horrible, right? And then some guy is cursing at you and calling you worthless and a murderer and all these accusations that are not true and chucking rocks at your head. So verse 11 and 12, it says that David of chapter 16 says to Abishai, who told David that he would gladly lop this guy's head off. That's Abishai, though. He's been this way, a little hot-headed the whole time, right? This is David's nephew. David says to him, "Behold, my own son seeks my life. How much more now may this Benjamite? Leave him alone and let him curse, for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look on the wrong done to me, and the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing today." That's an interesting perspective. Maybe the Lord will look on what's going on with me and deal with it himself, right? And make it right. So David does not retaliate. He doesn't defend. He leaves this guy to his cursing and his dirt clod throwing, and he keeps walking. He walks away from this guy. The curse. But the king and all the people, they end up at the Jordan, and there he refreshed himself. Don't you love that you can drag yourself to the living water and be refreshed? In the Word, something to watch for in the Word that's pretty consistent is this idea of living water. And living water in the Word is any water source that has an inlet and an outlet is called living water. So water that's like in a jug or in a well or in a pond, that would be like dead water because it doesn't have an in and an out. But a river, something that runs, there's an inlet and an outlet is called living water, which is what the Lord said, right? Come to me, right? Living water. And David goes to the Jordan, that's living water as an inlet and an outlet, and there he refreshes himself. Jesus, living water. It's the best way to stop the accuser. Go to the living water and let him refresh you and put you back on your feet. So they're refreshed here at the Jordan River. I love that. Okay, you guys ready for our next one? The rooftop avenger. Ahithophel, you guys. The rooftop avenger. This one's rough. Okay, so at this point, we already read 15 through 19 because we were talking about Hushai, but it says in verse 19 that Absalom and all the people and the men of Israel, they came to Jerusalem, and they have Ahithophel with them. And then Hushai comes up and says, "Long live the king." So right now, you have Absalom and Hushai and Ahithophel, and they're standing together. That's how the text reads. right? Hushai pledges allegiance to Absalom, David, right? And Ahithophel is there, because look at the very next verse. It says, verse 20, Absalom then turns to Ahithophel and says, you tell me what you think. Give me counsel. He would ask that of Ahithophel because Ahithophel is the wise counselor, right? He's deflected from David. He is now loyal to Absalom, and Absalom asks, give your counsel. What should we do? This is what Ahithophel says. Go into your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house. And all Israel will hear that you have made yourself a stench to your father, and the hands of all who are with you will be strengthened. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof. And Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel, it says. Y'all mark it, it's probably the same exact rooftop that David was pacing the day he looked down and saw Bathsheba. He's on the portico. It's not an accident. Ahithophel points to the portico, points to the balcony, the very same one that David was on, and says, you pitched your tent right there. It's coming back around. Ahithophel being the grandfather of Bathsheba, that is important. His little lamb. He's not happy. And this is out there, you guys. You cannot get more degrading and vile and open than what this counsel was. And Ahithophel says, oh, I've got a really good idea. See that porch? You go right there. Remember, David left 10 concubines back to dust and vacuum. I don't know. He's like, you guys stay here and keep house. Like, do the cobweb thing. Remember? Like, okay, those are the 10. David's concubines, okay? Which is a wife without the title and without the benefits. If you're a concubine, you're attached to that guy forever. You're stuck in the harem. Okay? And these 10 girls, these poor girls. Oh my gosh, you guys. How awful. How awful. It's horrible. So, they do this in front of everybody. Everybody can see. Remember, we said with Bathsheba, it's not secret. Everyone would see the king pacing the balcony, including Bathsheba. It was right there, and it would hover over the houses, the main houses where the mighty men would live to protect David, and then the VIPs of the city, and it would go down by class, basically. That's how they did that. It was horrible, but it's like a human defense from armies, and it keeps the important people close to the king. And everybody saw. It was out loud and in public. Here's what the Lord said. Nathan comes to David and says, there's a little lamb, and you took her. Remember? You are the man. And then Nathan pronounces a prophecy over David, which a lot of it we've read a couple times about the sword, right? But there's more to it than that. Back up in the text and take a look. Nathan in verse 7 says, you are the man. In verse 10, which we've been seeing, it says, now therefore this sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. This is the part we haven't read yet. Verse 11. Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against you out of your own house. And I will take your wives from before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of the sun. That is what is happening right now. David was told, one of the consequences, David, is that what you did to Bathsheba will be done to you tenfold, and not in secret, but in the light. Rough. Back to our text. The objective then, look at verse 21 again. Chapter 16, verse 21. It says, go into your father's concubines, whom he has left for the house, and all Israel will hear that you have made yourself a stench to your father, and the hands of all who are with you will be strengthened. Here's the thing. This is dishonoring to David, obviously, right? It's more than that. It's a statement of authority, you see. Taking possession of everything that belonged to the former king, especially wives, was what they did. They would kill the former dynasty, and they would take the wives as a usurp of alpha male over the previous dynasty. That's what Absalom is doing. It's much worse, like it could get worse. It's much worse than it looks like in his statement of taking over David's role as king. It's really awful. Shimei took pleasure in the stumbling of someone else. Ahithophel, though, he wants to kill David. He wants to hurt David in a way he won't recover. Grandpa wants revenge. It's awful. So it puts everyone on notice that Absalom will resist David even to his death. To claim the wives means he is all in. He's not backing down. This isn't like a game. It isn't a show. He means it, and he's just sealed it. He has dethroned the alpha male in this move. And Ahithophel's counsel was wise if what Absalom wanted to do was take the kingdom. This is how you do it. Step 1. You take the wives. Ahithophel knew what he was doing, and on top of that, it is personal. It's personal. So things are heating up. And that gets us to chapter 17. You guys tracking so far? Okay, chapter 17, the war options. The war options, okay? It's an anarchy strategy meeting, and it's Hushai versus Ahithophel, okay? That's what's going on. It's a little bit lengthy. We're just going to summarize. But there's 2 plans presented before David, okay? There's Ahithophel's plan, and there's Hushai's plan, and Absalom wants to hear both war options. Give me your best strategy on anarchy. Okay, Ahithophel, go. All right, here's some points that I have because they're exact counterpoints of Hushai. So here's what I got. First of all, Ahithophel painted David as a sitting duck. Right? Just a sitting duck. He's weary. He's discouraged. He can't hardly get off the ground. That's true. Right? He paints him as a duck. That's going to be different than Hushai. Ahithophel says things like, let me after him. I'll go. Let me choose, right? Me, tonight, let's go, right? That's important. 12,000 Navy SEALs. He had a number that he wanted. Remember, Ahithophel is not just some old wise guy with a beard. He was a mighty man of valor from the very beginning with David. He's one of the most seasoned guys David has. This guy is lethal and smart and mad, okay? It's not good. It's not good. Okay, so I will rise and attack, he says. I'm going to take them by surprise tonight. This is the same night of the afternoon of the tent thing. Tonight, I'm taking David, okay? You're going to strike only the king. Everybody else comes home. That's kind of the bullet points. Absalom says, okay, those are really good points, right? Hushai then comes in with his plan. His plan is very different. Hushai portrays David as a mother bear, protecting her cubs. Remember? He's enraged, he's mighty, he's protective, right? He's dangerous. And Hushai says, let's amass the entire army from Dan to Beersheba. That's every guy we can find from coast to coast, is what we would say in America. We're going to amass this huge army, okay? And in the morning, we're going to attack. We're going to attack in the morning. We're going to kill them all. Everyone. Here's the thing that was really different about Hushai. Hushai was smart. Ahithophel was smart. Hushai had him on this one. Because what does Hushai do? He gives Absalom a starring role in war. Ahithophel says, I'm going with my army. Hushai says, you are the man. You're the one, Fabio. You're going to be on your horse. Your hair is going to be flowing. It's going to be beautiful. People are going to be like, ah, that's you. It stroked his ego in a way that Ahithophel was not doing with his counsel. Hushai is like, I'm going to play to my crowd. He needs a starring role. You see, you're going to go out. It gives Absalom a chance for vengeance. Where Ahithophel wanted a chance for vengeance, Absalom also wants vengeance. Don't forget that. And Hushai is like, I'm going to play into this guy. He wants vengeance. He's mad at the just king, right? He wants vengeance. So Hushai makes this plan, and Absalom says, that's the one, the Fabio one with the horse and the chariots and the theme music. I want that one, right? I want to go. I want to be a part of it, in the middle of it. Here's the thing. Ahithophel was wise in his battle strategy. Very wise. He's a mighty Navy SEAL. He's tactical. He said his part, his war strategy, in like this many words. It was precise. It was smart. In that way, the word says, Ahithophel's counsel was good. It doesn't mean it was good as in virtuous or moral or righteous. It was good as in it was smart. It would have worked. David would have been toast. That's what it means. Ahithophel's plan would have for sure killed the king. For sure. He had the battle plan. He knows David. He knows how he hides in the wilderness. He knows how he can kind of really hide from anybody. How long did he do that with Saul? He knows all his favorite places. He knows what his kind of MO is at night when he hunkers down with his guys. He was the guy. He's like, I know every foxhole. I'm going to get this guy. He would have for sure killed David. It was good counsel. It would have worked. Hushai's job, though, was to do what? Remember his objective? To defeat the wise counsel of Ahithophel. Remember? That was the objective, to defeat it. And that's what he did. No one wants the Navy SEAL team hunting David. David would not have survived this. Ahithophel would have won, for sure. So Hushai devised this really smart plan by playing into Absalom's ego. There's nothing about this plan that would work. David would hear them coming forever away, especially with the parade and the chariots and the hair thing. It's not a secret, okay? And it gives them time, we're going to talk about it in a minute, to get David to a safe place because it was going to happen in the morning, in the light of day. Hushai is like, I've got a great plan. Go with a lot of loud noise in the middle of the day tomorrow. But you're going to be so cool doing it. Just the coolest. And he's like, yeah. He's like 20, okay? I totally am into that. With the hair and everything. So Hushai wins this argument. It was not smart, but it worked. It was strategically horrible, but it worked. Okay, next group of people. Ready? The messengers. Abiathar's boys. So get David intel as quickly as possible, right? So Hushai, his job, and that's what he did, was to go straight to Zadok and say, here's what I heard from Ahithophel. Here's what I gave as a plan. They don't know, maybe it's hard to tell if they knew which plan Absalom was going with at this time, but he's letting the priests know, here's the two options. They probably decided, well, Fabio's going with this one. Great. They let Zadok know. Zadok tells Abiathar and the boys take off running, right, to give intel. But a kid spots them. They're not very good at it. They're just PKs. They're pastors' kids. They don't know what they're doing. They're running like in the middle of the day, and they're like, I see you. Like, tag. That's about as good as I am at that game. Like, I totally see you. You're not hiding. So the boys run to a nearby house somewhere, right? This house. Look at verse 18. Chapter 16, verse 18. So 17, verse 18. It says that young man saw them, told Absalom. So both of them went away quickly and came to the house of a man at Baharim who had a well in his courtyard. So they went down into the well. And the woman of the house took and spread a covering over the well's mouth and scattered grain on it, and nothing was known of it. What's going on there? They would dry their grain out in the sun, so they would lay down like flax or linen, I don't know, wool, something, over the ground, and they would lay their grain out to dry. So she just laid it over the mouth of the well and put grain on it, and then no one knew. See? Smart. It reminds me of Rahab a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah, no one knew it. So when Absalom's servants came to the woman, they said, where are, how do you say it? Ahimaaz? Thank you, Ahimaaz. That makes so much sense. Hummus. I like hummus better. Hummus and Jonathan. And the woman said, they have gone over the brook of the water. And when they had sought and couldn't find them, they went back to Jerusalem. So they looked and looked. They lost track of these guys. Awesome, right? So they hid in the well until the coast was clear. And then they sprint to David, right, to give him the message. And they tell him about Ahithophel's plan. And they tell him about Hushai's plan. And they tell David, you got to get out of Dodge, right? because David is waiting at the fords of the wilderness for word. He's not too far away. They're like, you can't stay here. You ought to go. Okay? So David crosses the river. And he's like, you got to go. You got to go across the river. So that's what he does. All right. Meanwhile, back in Jerusalem, Ahithophel, the counselor, knowing Absalom went with Hushai's plan and that his plan was not going to be vetted out and that he was not going to kill David. He realizes that. He kills himself instead and he hangs himself. And that's his end. Isn't that sad? It's really sad. All right, next group of people, the supporters, the unlikely supporters. Look at this. This is interesting. Chapter 17, verse 27 says that when David came to Mahanaim, Shobi, the son of Nahash, from Rabbath of the Ammonites, and Makir, the son of Amiel, from Lodabar, and Barzillai, the Gilead, this is really embarrassing, from that one place, brought him a bunch of food, okay? That's it. So you have these unlikely supporters. Okay, did you guys look these people up at all? It's really interesting, this group of three, these three musketeers. The first guy's name was what, we think? The first guy. Verse 27. Shobi. It's probably not how you say it. But Shobi, yes. He is the brother of Hanan. Who is Hanan? Hanun. Do you guys remember Hanan? The gift basket hater, the beard cutter offer, ambassadors. Remember that? Yeah, this is the brother of that guy. Wow. Isn't that interesting? Hanan hated David. I don't know why. No one knows. Remember? He was just trying to bring a gift basket. Again, I'm telling you. Not good. But the ambassadors came to bring goodwill and congratulations to Hanan, right? And Hanan cut off their beard and their clothes, and they shamefully had to wait in Jericho for their beards to grow back out. This is the brother of that guy, and he comes to David. Okay, the next guy is who? Okay, who is Makir? We saw him in chapter 9. I told you there's a lot of names. You guys don't have to know this, but you were supposed to write these all down. Of
Jonathan's son.
Mephibosheth. Yes, okay, so remember Mephibosheth grew up in Lodabar, and he was couch surfing at Makir's house. That's this dude. The caretaker / roommate of Mephibosheth in Lodabar, the armpit of Israel. Remember that? Yeah, David found Mephibosheth at Makir's house. That's this guy. He comes. Who's the last guy? This is a trick question because we don't see him again until later. We haven't actually ran into him yet. Yeah. He's this old dude. We know that from chapter 19, who's wealthy and very loyal to David. We're going to see him next week in our homework. But he's an older guy, especially for in this time, to have an 80-year-old guy that can walk through the wilderness and find David. They did not, life expectancy was like 50. So this guy he's old, he's wealthy, he's loyal, and he's coming. So you have the brother of the gift basket guy, Makir from the armpit of Israel, and this old dude. And they shuffle up to David, the three of them, with food and stuff, which is funny that Shobi's like, here's a gift basket. David thinks he's all alone, right? Everyone's against him. Even people who are faking to be against him, he's just lumping everyone in together like Ziba, right? And just assuming the worst out of everybody. That's kind of the state that he's in. But here's these three guys that come out of really nowhere that have sort of been kind of in the outskirts of David's life, right? Kind of related to people that are sort of attached to David, that come in and support him and uplift him. It's just sweet. David needed somebody to be like, I am on your team. We haven't met or anything, but I am on your team. It's just like this band of misfits, but it lifts David up. And I love that. It's just really sweet. And it's just this little paragraph, unassuming paragraph, but they come and they support David, and I love that. There's one more character in the story that is very quiet in the story. It's like Esther, the book of Esther, that's really a conundrum because there's an entire book of the Bible and the Lord's not in it anywhere, except for he's everywhere. It's a lot like that. When the Lord is not mentioned in the text, that is him being mentioned in the text a lot of the times. The sovereign God. Here's the thing. This is ruckus, okay, these chapters. We've been kind of in this ruckus mode the last couple weeks. It's not anywhere closing, by the way. It's also happening next week, this ruckus. We come to these chapters without one mention of the Lord, really, but question, do you see in this chapter at all God's sovereignty and human responsibility working together kind of behind the scenes? He's really everywhere. Here's the thing. This is what our text looks like. Okay? This is what we did tonight. It's a mess. It really is. One of the themes of Samuel, which we talked about when we started 1 Samuel way back at Sally's house so long ago, we did an intro to Samuel, and we talked about one of the themes of Samuel being God's sovereign hand, right? That God used men, despite their disobedience or their obedience, whether they were successful or whether they failed, God was going to be sovereign over it all, right? There's people that are loyal. There's people that are rebellious. There's people that were rebellious that are now loyal. There's people that were loyal that are now rebellious. But God's sovereignty is still, his providential hand is still over it all. And that's kind of a theme of 1 and 2 Samuel. We saw that with Eli and Saul. Ugh. Right? And now with David, which is pretty painful. Okay? We see God's hand over it. He is sovereign. He is king. Whether men confess it true or not, whether they mention his name or not. God is sovereign because this is actually what our text looks like. All of it is under the sovereignty of God. You see, all of it. God arranges circumstances and people to accomplish his sovereign will, whether they walk with him or do not. It's a beautiful thing to watch. These chapters are a great example of watching the Lord use the people, these weird characters that we talk about, in his sovereign way. When we can't see God in our circumstances, chapter 16, chapter 17, we need to remember that there's far more happening above our heads that we cannot see. Here's the truth about sovereignty. What is over our head is still under his feet. And there's a lot that's over our head. Chapter 16, chapter 17, I feel like we live in the ruckus of that all the time, every day. Where is the Lord? Look at all these people running amok and controlling us and giving weird counsel, and just weird stuff is going on. And it's like, where's the Lord? He's silent. I don't see him. I can't feel him. I can't hear him. And all along, he's over it all. There's free will, and we run amok in our free will, and he takes our free will, and he still guides it into his purpose with his providential hand. That's the mystery of him being God, and we are not. That there is free will and sovereignty, and they coexist. We're just not going to get that, because we can't do that. It can't be both. He does both really well. America's a mess. The world is a mess. We live in chapter 16 and 17. That is how it is. And the Lord is hard to hear and hard to see. This is where we feel like we are down in the muck and mire, and we can't see anything else except for all this stuff down here. And all the while, he is this umbrella over us in his sovereignty. It's not out of his control. What's over our head, it's still under his feet. He's big. But in that, I want us to kind of recalibrate to something that's very important. There is a plan. There has been a blueprint that was rolled out before the foundation of the world, and the Lord is not thwarted off this blueprint. It does not matter how much we run amok, how many Ahithophels are out there, or Shimei's, or Zebas, or Davids. It doesn't matter. We run amok in our free will, run amok, just make a mess out of it. Okay? We do. He is not thwarted off his blueprint. Even now, the Lord has a blueprint, and we're going to see it. We're going to watch it. We're going to pull up from these chapters and look at the whole book and be like, totally, he was there the whole time. He used these chapters to get him to a point. Redemption's on his mind, on his heart. He's doing it now. What do I mean? What is the plan? Jesus is the plan. Do not forget, Jesus is the plan. He's been the plan all along. He is still the plan. He's still coming. In these chapters, the Messiah is on track. You see, remember the Davidic covenant? It feels so long ago. It was only in chapter 7. Remember that? A lot has happened in David's life since chapter 7. Wouldn't you guys say? Don't you guys think? Remember chapter 7 when we're like, oh, this is just beautiful. And we go, oh, we love Samuel. Remember that? David is totally Jesus-like all the time. Remember that? Remember back then in the olden days? Chapter 7? It wasn't that long ago in our text. It's only 10 chapters ago. The Davidic covenant. What did the Lord promise David in the Davidic covenant? He promised the Messiah. Remember? Lord, I just cannot stand it that you live in a tent. I want to build you a house. Remember that? And the Lord said to David, what? No, I will build you a house. I'm going to make a kingdom out of you, David, an eternal kingdom. Has David mucked that up? If you only read chapters 16 and 17, would you say that this covenant is doomed? Yes. Yeah. David, you're way off. See the ruckus? This is not redeemable. We are in big trouble. Here's the thing about the Davidic covenant. It is unconditional. It means that this covenant is going to stand and it's going to come all the way through fruition without the condition of what David does or does not do. Thank the Lord. I thank the Lord every day that he put an unconditional covenant on me, because I tell you what, he would have drawn me like a hot rock a long time ago, like bam, no. It's unconditional. He is going to get me to the end regardless on my condition. Same with David. It's not looking hot right now, you guys. It's just not. It's just, what is this? What is happening? What happened to chapter 7? The Lord says, I'm still in chapter 7. Chapter 7 is rolling out right before your eyes. You just can't see it. You see, the scepter of Judah will never depart. There is a king coming from Judah that is an eternal kingdom, and he's still coming. You see, the blueprint, it's still rolling out. Amnon is out of the way. Absalom is about to be out of the way. Okay? It's ugly, it's gross, but remember, the theme of God's sovereignty is that he works his sovereign plan within the muck and the mire of our free will. It is working out. Here's the thing. David is screwing up, okay? But Solomon is tucked away, waiting in the wings, you see. Waiting in the wings. Nobody has mentioned Solomon. Solomon is not threatened. Absalom doesn't have some sort of death threat on his head, you see. Solomon is tucked away. Why is that important? Remember at the end of chapter, 11? After Nathan comes and says, you are the man, and the wages of sin is death in the first baby, but then she conceives again, and they hold Solomon in their arms. Remember that? And the Lord redeems them together, gives them the blessing of a son, and says, this is the one. My son's coming through this one. Remember that? Solomon. He's tucked away. He's waiting in the wings. The bloodline is coming through him. In all of the destruction, and all of the family is just dropping like flies. People are getting murdered. Stuff is happening. There's anarchy and all this stuff. Who knows what's going on? The Lord says Solomon has been tucked away and protected from all of this, as my son is coming. The Lord has it. He's got it. What's over our head is under his feet. The blueprint, it's still rolling out. You guys know that, right? We are on track. We are on track for Jesus to come get us. It's yucky, it's mucky, it's ruckus, it's free will, it's murder, it's mayhem. No one knows what's going on. No one knows which way is up. Our accuser is on hot. He's hot. He's after us, right? All this stuff is going on, and you're like, where's the Lord? I can't even see him. He's rolling it out. It's under his control. It won't be thwarted.